Hello and welcome to the Dad Whisperer. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson. I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen in today and to engage in a topic that I believe is not only close to the heart of God as a father, but one that I believe has the potential to change our country for the better from the ground up as dads intentionally and consistently dial into their daughters' hearts. Well, before we begin, let me review the template. You guys have it down by now. On your mark, get set, go. On your mark is the topic or the theme. Get set is filling that in with stories and stats. And go is always your action step that you can put your love for your daughters and your sons into motion this week. Well, today I am excited to be talking again about one of my very favorite topics. This is a theme that I've actually shared around the country now at different men's events and conferences, and it's been a hit. So based on the feedback that I've received, I know you're going to love this. And I have done a talk on this before. It was my very beginning. I think it was my second show here on the Dad Whisperer, where I called it Messages on Mirrors. And today I'm doing a reboot of that, and I'm calling this Why Messages on Mirrors Matter. So that's on your mark today. The title is Messages on Mirrors and Why They Matter. Well, get set. Let me now begin to fill that in. I'm going to give you some new thoughts, things I've collected, stories I've heard over the last couple of years, and I'm going to bring that into the conversation today. Well, a few months ago, I spoke at a men's conference in Bellevue, Washington, and the title that I gave my workshop was this: Messages on Mirrors and Other Power Tools, equipping you to be the dad your daughter needs. And I'm telling you, in my 8 years of traveling to Mars, from my planet of Venus, where I've discovered that men would rather do nothing than do it wrong, I was completely surprised when over 100 men packed into this room with standing room only, all to hear about how to engage their daughters more actively, intentionally, and consistently. And I was blown away at the response. And really, these men even cried. At various points, I stopped and said, "Why are you crying?" And these men were engaged at a heart level with the material that I was presenting. And so today I thought, you know what? I'm going to swing back around for those of you that either missed hearing about this back in the beginning, or maybe want a reboot about why this matters so much to us as girls. I wanted to cover this again. And I can tell you that what blew me away that day and continues to blow me away is that when dads write messages on mirrors in their daughter's life, in their world, it makes such a difference that these dads tell me their stories. They send me pictures of what this is like. In fact, even a couple weeks ago, I was at the home of a dad and an 8th grade daughter, and dad said, "Here, Michelle, come into her room." And she goes, "Dad, don't go in there." "Oh, you can go in there," she said. She softened. And I got to see the sticky note right inside the door where dad had written to her 6 months ago, because I'd given him the idea, right? Because I'm wanting to be in the back as the dad whisperer. I'm whispering to you, go do this. And when dads do it, their daughters reap the benefits. And then dads want me to be proud of them, which I love doing. So again, you've heard me say before, dads, that this is my observation, right? From traveling to Mars for 8.5 years, is that men would rather do nothing than do it wrong, right? But I'm telling you, doing nothing is doing it wrong. And I know you want to get it right. So when it comes to a dad actively investing in the heart space of his daughters, it's helpful to know where your daughter gets triggered, where she struggles, so that you as a father can combat that with action as you fight to get a message into your daughter's heart space that affirms her and validates her and builds her up. And essentially, you are representing God as a father to her. And so today, I'm going to teach you some more insider trade secrets from my planet of Venus to yours. So right from the start, as we talk about messages on mirrors, I want to tell you a story of something that just came up this week. So I was talking with a woman, she's 35 years old, and I just happened to ask her, because this was fresh on my mind and preparing, is I said, "What is the mirror like for you?" Random question, right? She didn't even hesitate, and here's what she said: "I hate the mirror." Dads, this is what I hear a lot. We have a love-hate relationship with the mirror. We can't live without it. But oftentimes looking in it is very, very destructive. Now, look, if I told you what this woman looks like, the one I was talking with this week, you would say very beautiful, without a doubt. And yet she told me, I hate the mirror. She said, because I can see all of my flaws and it reflects back everything that's wrong with me and it makes me hate it. Okay, dads, this is something you will probably hear from your daughters if you were to ask her the same question I asked this gal. What do you think of the mirror? Or what is your relationship like with the mirror? Or what do you think when you look in the mirror? You could open up a very powerful conversation with her. But here's what was interesting is this woman and I began to talk. I said, how long have you hated the mirror? She said, as far back as I can remember, probably around age 9 or 10. She said, I was awkward. I had to wear big, thick glasses and kids made fun of me. So look at how she internalized what they told her. And then when she looked in the mirror, it was another reflection back that reminded her that she was awkward. And in her mind and in her view, she said, I'm ugly. Interestingly enough, she has a daughter who's 10, the very age that she was when the mirror became very hard for her. And I said, what is that like? As you look at your daughter at 10, she's so fragile. Do you ever look at her and think, oh, I can see why you wouldn't want to look in the mirror. Yeah, kind of unattractive. She said, never. I don't look at her that way at all. And yet we talked about how she has invested in her daughter's life even recently and how her daughter told her, I don't like the fat on my legs. Okay, this little tiny 10-year-old, but it opened up a conversation with mom because she said, I had no idea that my daughter was even thinking that way. And she said, asked me, Mom, do you ever not like yourself? What a random question, but not on Venus. Do you ever not like yourself, Mom? So Mom got to say, I do struggle with that, honey bun. But they got to talk about how she felt about her leg having jiggly skin. And Mom got to say, that's actually strong. That's muscle. That's strength in you there. That isn't something you're lacking or that's wrong with you. And, fat makes us strong when we eat it in our diet. So in other words, Mom said to her daughter what she wishes someone had said to her years ago. But it wasn't a generation where we talked about that. So that's why I want to equip you as dads to be able to have conversations with your daughters on the things that matter to them and speak into the areas of struggle. Now, let me go back to the conference in Bellevue. There was a dad that came up to me at my book table and said, hey, I've got to miss your session. Can you give it to me in a nutshell? Give me the quick Cliff Note version. So I told him and I handed him a sticky notepad of notes that he could put on the mirror of his daughter and gave him a dry erase marker, which I am going to tell you at the end of today. If you don't get to listen to the whole thing, that's what I want you as dads to go buy today, if you don't have it already on hand, so that you can put messages on the mirrors in your daughter's life. So I told the dad what it was about, and he began to tear up immediately. And I was like, whoa, okay, what's happening? And he said, well, my daughter is 5 years old. And just this week, we were talking about going to Disneyland. And he said, my daughter struggles with eczema on her face. And she scratches it a lot and it bleeds. And he pointed to his chin. And he said, so when my wife was talking with her this week, now mind you, 5 years old, and saying, hey, should we plan a trip to Disneyland? He said, my daughter, without hesitating, said, I don't want the princesses to see me like this. He starts crying. I start crying. He said, I'm heartbroken that my daughter, who's 5, already feels that she's not beautiful enough to even look in the face of a Disney princess. I said, see why you've got to go in the mirror. I said, Dad, you've got to write on the mirror so that when she looks in the mirror, your words are right there to counter what she's telling herself in her head when she looks in the mirror. Isn't that a powerful story? So dads, here's what I want to say to you. This whole thing about mirrors being our enemy is a pandemic. This isn't just here, there, scattered. This is everywhere I go, universal, a struggle with the mirrors. And dads, you are part of the solution. And that's why I'm talking with you today about this topic. I can tell you honestly, if I had a quarter for every time I've heard a girl or a woman tell me that she struggles with the mirror, I would be rich. And over, the women that tell me this, you would look at them and say, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you radiate. But that is not what these women see. And this is even part of my story, you guys. I have struggled with an eating disorder. I have struggled with the mirror. I would say I've made peace for the most part with it by now in my 50s, but I've lived way too much of my life bound by the negative, critical, self-hate messages that I hear in my head when I look in the mirror. And that's why I want you as dads to be better equipped to go in. Does that make sense? So that you can already anticipate, because you're listening to this today and saying, oh, I can't imagine my daughter would think negative thoughts. I'm telling you, well, then come into my office. You will hear beautiful women say, when I ask, what do you hear? They'll say, you're a fat pig, you're gross, you're disgusting. And I say, dads, remember back to English class. First person, second person, third person. When your daughter hears a message, you fat pig, you're ugly, you're gross, you're fat, that is second person. So the question is, who is saying that to her? She doesn't say, I'm ugly. Rarely do I hear that. Well, personally, I believe that the enemy of our souls, the devil, the accuser, is behind this because he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I believe that mirrors are one of his greatest weapons to destroy women's confidence, self-esteem, and on it goes. Can you see why I'm activating your heart and your head today? Because you can stand up, dads of daughters, as a warrior and help to fight for your daughter, because your daughter needs you to do battle for her so she can see herself as she truly is. Okay, let me ask you guys, how many of your wives, ex-wives, girlfriends, sisters, daughters struggle with the mirror? Okay, you probably would say all of them. And you know why this is hard for you? Because most men I've met do not struggle with the mirror. In fact, it's funny, my co-leader, Clay Swanson of the ABBA Project says, I have days I don't even look in it. I'm like, oh my goodness, are we different on Mars and Venus? But you guys don't struggle with it. In fact, you probably look in it and go, looking pretty good today. Yeah, like what I see. It is so not that for us as girls. In fact, I can remember I was about 23, 4, somewhere right in there. And I'd gained a lot of weight in that season, probably about 40, 50 pounds, actually, like a lot of weight. And I can remember that I would walk in the door. I was living at home for a while, and I would walk in the front door. I can remember one time like it was yesterday, looking in the hallway mirror and hating what I saw. Down the stairs I went, fell on my bed, sobbing, saying, I hate myself. So that's why I could relate to this woman this week at 35 saying, I hate the mirror. I'm like, I get that. I've lived it. And I'm telling you, what I didn't know then is how much stuff was underneath that. Memories were starting to emerge of sexual abuse from my grandfather and all of that self-loathing and self-hatred and my binge eating disorder. It all started in that season. So I projected onto the mirror that which was inside me. So the truth, Dad, is that your daughter every single day is asking the question, am I beautiful? And she longs to be told that she is. And if she doesn't hear it from you as a mirror, she will look in another mirror until she hears that she is. And by saying that she will look in another mirror, I want you to hear that I'm actually talking about guys. A lot of guys, especially the ones that are players, you know what I'm talking about, they know how to say the right thing to get what they want. But you as a father, when you speak words of life, words of truth into your daughter's life, she will internalize that view of her. When you say, I'm going to give you some scripts, dads, I'm going to put words in your mouth here. You may say something like, your eyes are so beautiful. I'm telling you, they make your whole face light up. I love looking at your eyes. You could say something like that. You could say, wow, when you wear that color, it so makes your eyes shine. She will remember that all day. When you say something like, you are so gifted with creativity and fashion. I love the way you put outfits together. Okay, a little PS, you may not even like the outfit going, I would have never put those colors together or those patterns together. But look at you are applauding and affirming the creativity underneath it. Because remember, your daughters are looking in you as a reflection back for them to really substantiate and create a view of themselves that's not only based on their own view, but they're collecting pieces of data to take inside that informs them about themselves. So dads, you don't have a hidden agenda. All you're doing is speaking words of life. honey, you are so beautiful. Again, you notice I said honey. Put those kinds of little cute names that you call her into that to affirm her and build her up. Because again, you are a mirror reflecting back the truth of how you see her, which then brings up another, I want you to kind of visualize this. I'm going to give you an object lesson. If you were sitting here in front of me, I would hold up two mirrors that I have. They're both big. They're both the same. One of them has no cracks in it. The other one is all broken. I've glued it together, but it demonstrates a cracked, broken mirror. So dads, the question I have is, what kind of a mirror are you? When your daughter looks at a reflection in your face, do you give her a clear view back of truth, or does your own brokenness get in the way of how you reflect back the view of your daughter? Right? So if she looks at a reflection, maybe she had a really hard day and she comes home and she's crabby because that queen bee told her she didn't like her outfit or made fun of her. So she comes home and she's in a really bad mood. But your own brokenness says, I don't tolerate that in my house. We are going to have good attitudes. Dads, that's a broken reflection back, because that's your own stuff, is I don't want to sit with this, right? But maybe in that moment saying, I want to be a clear view. I want to be a representation of God as a father that loves his kids, that loves his daughters, that tracks with their ups and downs. Take a breath. Say, I want to be a clear mirror. Honey, tell me about your day. Wow, it sounds like it was hard. You were resilient. You were strong. Look at you're affirming inner qualities if her outward on that particular day got smashed to pieces. Does that make sense? So those are some practical ways that you as a dad can be a positive mirror in the lives of your daughters. I mean, I think a number of years ago, I was talking to these 5th and 6th grade girls, probably about 60 of them sitting on the floor, and I titled my talk, God and the Bod. And I showed them these mirrors, right? I held them up and I was teaching them this concept because for 4th and 5th and 6th graders, that kind of pre-middle school age, it's brutal. Girls are mean. That's why we have a movie called Mean Girls. We do not have one called Mean Boys. And as these girls were sitting there wide-eyed, they were so adorable. They were just looking at me with all the awareness and openness in the world. And God gave me this download. And I said, okay, girls, you know what it's like when another girl at school makes fun of your outfit or looks you up and down. She doesn't say it, but you're getting the message. She doesn't think you put something together very well. But because she's in the pecking order higher than you, you're devastated and say, I'll never wear that again. So what I did with these girls, I've actually done this at men's conferences. I make them put one hand on one hip, and then I want them to hold their finger up with the other. And I want them to wave it back and forth and say these words, broken mirror. Well, as you can imagine, men start laughing because it's so ridiculous, but I say, you won't forget it. And I said, dads, you can teach your daughters this concept of when they are made fun of by someone that they esteem more than themselves, and they want to be in the cool group, but that girl is really mean. She's gotten up there for a reason, sometimes by, destroying people along the way. Teach your daughters to say to themselves by putting one hand on one hip and their other finger in the air, she is just a broken mirror. And you can do it with a funny, sassy attitude. That's what I made these girls do. I said, oh, that does not have enough sass. We're going to do it again on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Broken mirror. And they loved it. In fact, I can think of some of these girls came up to me a year later when I was speaking at a camp. And one of them goes, can I lead it? And she jumped up to the front and led like 100 girls in this whole exercise of broken mirror. I think, wow, what that would do to us as women to be told by our dads, that isn't about you. You're the same you. You look in both mirrors. You're the same. But the mirror you look in has everything to do with how you see yourself. So I say, dads, if you could really help your daughters learn at an early age that even if you've had a bad day and reflected something back out of your brokenness, go and make amends and say, you know what? That was all me. That was my bad. That was my brokenness. And you help your daughters to begin to understand that even if someone reflects back something that's not true, they don't have to believe it and they can fight back with truth. Does that make sense? So my point here is to say that we all look into mirrors and they shape our identity because they reflect back the truth or the untruth of who we are. Does that make sense? So if you have a daughter, I want to say another layer of this. Give her feedback on both external and internal qualities about herself. I can think of a girl that I know who I knew in high school that she really struggled with saying, my dad never affirms me, so I don't feel very beautiful because my dad doesn't say it. There you go, dads. And what she said is that when her dad took the ABBA project, he did this 9-month program with me. In about the 5th month, when it was on this theme, she said, I got to tell my dad for the first time how much it hurts me that he never affirms me. And he said to her, honey, I'm so sorry. Your mom and I decided when you girls were little that we would only affirm qualities about who you are on the inside because we didn't want you to think your beauty was only external. But what he didn't realize is he did one at the expense of the other. So I say, dads, do both. You want to give observations and affirmations about both outer and inner beauty. Does that make sense? So you're, yes, telling her things about what you see, but then you're having to dig deeper to affirm qualities about who she is on the inside. So you heard me say this at the beginning. Here is your practical battle plan. You ready, dads? Write messages with dry erase marker or onto sticky notes, your messages. And I think in a technological world where so many things are digital, having something in your own handwriting stands out among the rest. So write messages of truth with dry erase marker onto her mirror directly, or you can do it where you write it on sticky notes, because I have had dads send me pictures of both. And I'm telling you guys, girls leave these messages up for months because they're so precious to them. Let me tell you about Tim Truesdale. His story is awesome on this one. And dads give ideas to other dads. Well, he heard me speak at a men's conference in Colorado about maybe 3 years ago, where I gave the tools, and he happened to pick out a brown dry erase marker. A month later, he takes this home and he tells me this story. He said, I don't go anywhere without this. And he pulls it out of his back pocket. It was awesome. And he said, when I went home a month ago, I wrote on my 10-year-old daughter's mirror, have a great Saturday, Olivia. He said, I wasn't working very hard, but I just put that on there. But he said, she said nothing. So he didn't think it really had all that much impact. But he said, my wife came to me the next day and said, did you see the mirror? He goes, no. She said, Olivia wiped off the words S-A-T-U-R, and she wants you to put S-U-N for Sunday. He said, are you kidding me? So he knew it mattered and he was hooked. Well, within that month, he said, my daughter from college came home and said, why don't I get those? Why don't I get messages on mirrors? So here's what he said. I've got an away game too. All this confidence, right? Because he knew what to do to fix it. And he had a battle plan and a strategy. So he said, what I do now is I go into my college daughter's room, I write on her mirror, I take a picture, and I send it in real time to her at college. And he said, even here at the conference, I am writing messages on the mirrors here and sending them to my daughters. Oh my goodness, I love that. So dads, these are practical ways. This is your go step today. Go out right now, either into the drawer in your house. Maybe you have this at the office. Maybe you've got to stop by Office Depot or Staples. Buy dry erase markers and sticky notes and put them today on your daughter's mirrors. Then send me pictures. I want to hear the stories and see the pictures. Write me at drmichelle@thedadwhisperer.com because I want to celebrate this with you. Dads, it's time to stand up as a warrior and fight for your daughters because it's brutal out there and it's brutal in here. And I'm pointing to my head because on the inside, so often we beat ourselves up. But when you as a dad give a life-breathing, affirming message to your daughter that says, here's how I see you and here's the truth of who you are, oh my goodness, it goes all the way into the depths of our spirits and affirms who we are. And as they say, Father knows best. Well, today you've been listening to my talk called Why Messages on Mirrors Matter. You've gotten ideas, you've heard stories. So between today and next Monday, go get sticky notes, go get dry erase markers, and write messages that are life-breathing, positive, loving messages to your daughters. and then send me pictures and tell me the stories. As always, you can go to my website at drmichellewatson.com where I have more resources. You can find a link to Amazon where you can buy my book. And remember, you can always subscribe to the Dad Whisperer podcast on iTunes. Well, this wraps up another week's topic. It's been a joy to be with you. Dads, get out there, intentionally and consistently invest in pursuing your daughter's hearts today. Go, Dads.